Depression has become one of the most common mental disorders in the world. In the UK alone, roughly 1 in 6 of us has suffered or is suffering from it. There are many people who regard those who suffer from depression as weak, disabled, and dangerous. But how true are these assumptions? In London, a tourism hotspot and the bustling heart of the UK, there is a little cake shop located on Brick Lane which may not attract much attention. But this elusive shop is really rather special. A depressed cake shop had been located on this street, a bakery which is trying to raise awareness for mental health. Unique and creative cakes are to be found here, which create chances for dialogues.
You would find nothing but grey products, and that begs the question, why is the cake grey? And from there you can have a conversation with somebody, and you can lose the stigma because it's suddenly all right to talk about mental health, because hey, it's a cake.
After appearing in London, the depressed cake shop popped up in many UK cities, as well as in Los Angeles, Venice, Seattle, Glasgow, and even Australia and China. Though these cakes look miserable on the outside, they have surprisingly interesting content baked inside, just like the customers who come here and are willing to share their stories.
And she burst into tears. And she burst into tears because, as she put it was safe to do so. She had held it all inside for so long, and yet there she was, talking to me and crying her eyes out at the counter. And I came round and gave her a hug, and we came and sat in here, had a cup of tea, and we both had a cry, and you know what? That's what the Depressed Cake Shop was about. And yes.
With a 15-year history of depression, Melanie has poured, baked and crafted her every effort into these cakes, not only with the hopes of better expressing the social stigma which surrounds and stifles mental illness, but also to put a smile on people's faces. Such a passion for unique bakery has been inspired for her tough experiences of discrimination in the past.
It still exists, there is no question, or there wouldn't be a need for us to be doing this. I personally ended up losing one job for admitting to mental illness.
A patient, devoted and careful worker, Melanie used to work 75 hours per week for her company, but was unfairly dismissed. Disappointment and anger still remain within Melanie for her perceived harsh treatment from employment.
You're that low, somebody has just fired you for being that low, and you tell me where you're supposed to find the strength to be able to fight your case in the courts. Also, tell me who would want a job back in a company of that nature, whose understanding of humans and their frailty and their need for support and forgiveness and kindness.
Being a boss with such a problem, she can now better understand and appreciate her employees, no matter if they're mentally ill or not.
It makes no difference, in a sense, to me, because I think that you approach people equally, but I think it's very, very heartening, and it's really, really good, actually, to have a kind of degree of honesty and openness about this, and to be speaking about these kinds of mental issues, I think is very, very important, because there's so much of a stigma which still surrounds it.
Sharing the same point of view, and is open-minded about his depression, just like Melanie. Working in the Mind charity shop in Sherwood, Nottingham, he has taken to the warming and comfortable environment here, and it has helped him to work out of the gloomy and depressed periods of his life. He's now trying his best to guide helpless people through their paths to recovery.
Coming home from BT nearly £2,000 a month here, at the time I only got £400 a month, so it was a real struggle. But it was just about being happy and trying to sort my life out. I will be very, very open about my mental health. I wouldn't have been 5 years ago because I didn't really understand what I was going through, and it was obviously a lot brought on by the stress of work and other things, but no, I don't worry about it now. I tell people.
Upon speaking to Jeremy, he showed us his private office where he teaches and practices psychotherapy. He suggests that to face the problem in the right way and to talk to somebody could be the first step to help yourself when it comes to depression.
It can be the case that if somebody's feeling distress, emotionally unwell, as so many people are, that can be perceived by others or possibly by the client themselves as a failing. Of course, sometimes it's not failing at all. It could be a very useful indication that some things in their life or the way they perceive their life are problematic.
But nonetheless, they're all decent human beings with their frailties, and I can potentially make a benefit to another human being by being understanding and by showing that they have really good qualities in them and pointing those out to them. One of the hardest things is actually to believe that you have any value. It's so desperately important, if you have mental illness, to stay in employment if you can, because it's an objective measure of whether or not you can do something, whether you have something to offer. Of course everyone has something to offer, there's no question about that.
You consider historically those people who have been defined as mentally ill. It's been the most powerless groups within society: women, ethnic minorities, homosexuals, people who are perceived as deviant, people who differ from those with the power to define.
This never happens here either. And if you sort of look, it sort of goes from light grey to dark.
Melanie featured on both BBC Radio and The Breakfast Show and is still continuing her fight for the fair treatment for those who are suffering from mental problem.
I don't know. Having experienced the discrimination, having heard others' tales of it, that has to stop.
Teary-eyed, you can tell that this lady's feelings comes from the heart.
What we have discovered about this stigma is that it's not necessarily that people won't talk about it. It's that if you talk to someone, if you say, I have this, and you know what, I'm a normal human being, and you know me or don't know me, you judge me or don't judge me, it gives permission to someone to say, actually, this is my experience, or this is the experience I had with a family member. All of these things have happened, and I can now talk. And maybe, now that I know that I talked about it and the world did not end.
If somebody wants to talk about the mental health, it's a cry for help in some way, even if it's a pat on the back or a hug or whatever.
Mental health is less visible, and of course some people will try to hide. The provision has been lacking for a long time in any case.
Jeremy revealed, although it is a fact that there are many cases in everyday lives, some professionals still doubt the very existence of depression.
When you asked me how I would meet somebody with depression, I responded that I would be curious, and I'd be curious about their experience. Now, when we consider power, and when we consider the ability to deny that somebody is experiencing something, how abusive to tell somebody that they're not experiencing what they're experiencing.
After going through so much, Melanie and Ant stay optimistic about their lives. The heartwarming passion and homemade cakes, the easygoing attitude and the welcoming environment of the charity shop are providing more customers with positive support. We might get lost in today's fast-paced society and forget the little things which bring us joy and happiness. While fighting against discrimination may be an ongoing process, patients with depression and other mental illness could confront their problems by taking the first step of communicating their issues.